Like Kanye West in 2004, and not so much in 2022 when he's hanging out on the sidelines of the Super Bowl, jamming to the sounds of the 90s through the wire is on short notice. We have Savage J. Perrin, the former CES and Cage Titans bantamweight champion, coming in on short notice, replacing Khalid Taha to take on Mario Bautista. And look, when I look at this fight, it really is interesting. Was Mario Bautista a little bit hip to the game? Was he a little bit too early when he came into the UFC? Because his UFC debut was on short notice against Corey Sandhagen. And you know what? I gotta be honest. He gets finished in that fight. He gets finished in the first round. But he showed flashes of brilliance even in that fight. I know he gets dropped by a flying knee. He gets a takedown in that fight. And then out of that, Corey Sandhagen's able to do a little bit of work, get the submission. But in that, pumping the jabs, switching stances, good low kicks, movement to all three levels, which is something very consistent with Mario Bautista's career. The guy's incredibly aggressive, and when you talk about three-level strikers, which I absolutely love to see, they can be a kryptonite to a lot of different things that their opponents do. And, you know, you talk about three-level strikers, and on the flip side, you have absolute power wrestlers that have no skills on the feet. We will not have that coming up this weekend. Mario Bautista, very well-rounded. I can say the same thing for Jay Perrin as well. And if you look at the 4-on-in, he only has the one loss. It's a little bit of a kind of a head-scratcher because that was back in 2019 on Dana White's Contender Series. He's taking on Dwight Joseph, and in that fight, it was really, really close.
I don't want to steal your line, Craig, but I thought he won.
I really did. I mean, it was the takedowns of Perrin, it was the volume of Perrin versus the power of his opponent. And at the end, it kind of left you shaking your head. All three judges score the contest. Dwight Joseph, who went on to have one more fight in 2020. We haven't seen him since. I mean, interesting, especially out of a big-time prospect in Dwight Joseph, a guy who had a fight turned to a no contest against William Joplin. Unfortunate, but William Joplin, pioneer in MMA, due to lightning. They ended the fight due to lightning strikes. What? So I checked that up on his Tapology page. That's my tangent for the show. Second tangent, I never wear hats. I'm going to go play hockey because this is an incredibly short notice. But when it comes to Jay Perrin, comes back, Phoenix Rising, 2 big wins, Cage Titans championship, and again, the last time out, the CES Bantamweight Championship gets a win over, in a title challenge, and he faced a lot of adversity in that fight, came out on the other end with a submission win. But for Jay Perrin, more wins by submission than he has by knockout. Plenty of decisions as well. But he is a really well-mixed fighter, and I like the amount of, talent that he's faced on the regional level.
And that's why I do think he's going to stay around the UFC for a little while. Like, you don't give a guy Mario Bautista as his UFC debut if you don't have any confidence in him, because that's the thing about Bautista. Hasn't been in the UFC for that long, but his level of competition is absolutely insane. And that's why it's going to be really interesting, him actually getting a guy coming in on his UFC debut, because for Bautista, you could make the argument this is by far his easiest fight in the UFC so far. But again, his other fights have been against the likes of guys like Trevin Jones. We all know how good he is. Corey Sandhagen, like you had mentioned, like, he's been in there with some really, really quality guys, and that's why I think this fight's going to be very interesting. But this is the thing about Mario Bautista that I do worry about. He is that really good 3-level striker, like you say, but sometimes when he goes for body hooks, or when he does try to duck, those ducks are telegraphed, and that's something that you do really worry about when he does start to face the upper echelon guys. Like, if Corey Sandhagen can catch you with it, that's one thing. Corey Sandhagen can catch pretty much any fighter in the rankings with that move, much less a guy outside of the rankings, but that's just one of those holes that he's had since his UFC debut, and it has come up in a few fights since, so I'm curious to see if that's a hole that he can just patch up overnight.
It's kind of funny because, again, Bautista will throw a leg kick, drop his head, throw to the body, back out of the way, and for Jay Perrin, he'll throw a leg kick, kind of just stay in the pocket for a little bit too long, and he can get hit. Like, he's susceptible to that. I know even on Contender Series, and then I watched it throughout Perrin's career, but Dominic Cruz was really critical of, okay, sometimes this guy can get caught just looking, the boxing analogy, the Teddy Atlas, you're taking pictures, but he doesn't check leg kicks very well. He just eats them, and that's one of those things that it's kind of continued on throughout his career. Now, for Jay Perrin, he trained out of Sityodtong, Boston, which I know I've walked by that gym before, but he trains out of Syndicate MMA, and he had Vince Morales in his corners last time out, but so many good training partners at Syndicate. I believe we had John Wood up there as one of the coaches of the year, if not an honorable mention, but a really big powerhouse gym. They just had one of their leaders, Roxanne Modafferi, retire last week. She got a big-time send-off, and one of the judges wanted to send her off with a pat on the back.
There's no way where Roxanne's still going to be in the sport of MMA, I think, moving forward, and I think that's a great thing for everybody.
But when we focus on this fight, with Bautista, he had 2 fights in 2019, 1 fight in 2020, 1 fight in 2021. Now, it's not for lack of trying. He was supposed to be, or he was booked in a second fight in 2021. Opponent fell out. Then he's booked against Khalid Taha this weekend. But for Bautista, you lose to Sandhagen. You have a fight of the night against Jinsu Son, who I thought would be in the UFC forever. He had a pretty well a fight of the night against Piotr Jan as well, but then it was like happy trails. And then his next time out, he picks up a big-time performance bonus when he's taking on Miles Johns, finishes him. Now, Johns was invincible up until that fight, and then the John Castaneda fight. But when it comes down to this one, Matt, again, both guys well-rounded. They will both shoot for the takedown, both very good strikers. Now, again, this fight was actually announced as we were premiering our full card video. At the start, at the end, we said, well, if Mario Bautista gets an opponent, we'll be sure to update you. We update you tonight on Tuesday, doing the damn thing. So there's no odds on this one yet. We'll have a look at the Tapology votes. They're a surprise to us there to you. Now, Matt, I was in fuego. Now, people think that we have Bill behind the scenes holding the cards up so we know exactly what to say. There's some notes here, but other than that, again, I don't lie about not looking at the Tapology votes. So I'm going to say, short notice for Perrin. Mario Bautista, the more well-known commodity, UFC veteran. I'm going to set the over-under at 70% Bautista. What would you say?
I'll say over.
You're going to say over, and we look at it. Holy sweet smokes. 368 total votes, 94% Bautista, 61% by decision, 20% by knockout for the 6% that have Perrin, 59% by decision, 18% by submission and change in a knockout. Now, Matt, when it comes to this fight, I mean, I look at Jay Perrin, definitely a different skill set than a guy like Jinsu Son. Jinsu Son would go out there and throw strike for strike.
Could eat shots.
Volume, like, I absolutely loved his performances and outside of the UFC as well. But when it comes to this one, it's a little bit of a tricky one. But when I take it, you know, full picture, Perrin's best win, probably Johnny Bedford, a guy that's really been around for a very long time. And for Mario Bautista, you beat a guy like Miles Johns by knockout. You get the win over Son. You have a back and forth until you get finished against Corey Sandhagen. But really, again, the troubling thing is, his last time out 10 months ago, he gets finished by Trevin Jones, who is a good fighter.
It's incredibly hard.
Is a very good fighter, but again, I know we want to leave the people not necessarily wanting more, but what can you tell me about Perrin if he's going to get a win here against Bautista?
I think Perrin can be the more consistent grappler between these two guys. Like, I really think if he is very dedicated to shooting double legs, single legs up against the cage, the type of weapons and the type of moves that get your head out of danger, and they sort of smother the range of your opponent. Because, like you said early on in the video, Bautista is really good at going to the leg, going to the body, going to the head. All of those things require a lot of distance to actually pull off. So I do think if Perrin is the more steady guy, just tries to move forward, I know that's going to put him in the line of fire, and he might get finished as a result of it. But in this fight, I don't think he's going to have a lot of success on the feet because of his lack of volume. And again, on the ground, I'm not going to say that he's going to rear naked choke Mario Bautista in the first round, but again, he has shown in his fights a very good style of wrestling when he has to go to it, and he is a fairly good grappler. So again, if Perrin is going to get a win, I would expect quite a bit of grappling, but I do think Mario Bautista in his short UFC tenure, even though he is 2-2, I think he's a much better fighter than that 2-2 UFC record would suggest. It's like with Miles Johns, like you predicted Sexy Mexi to beat him, very good on you, but most people, myself included, and a lot of people I saw on the internet, like people were excited about sort of the future of Miles Johns, the prospect he could become. I think if he doesn't lose that fight and in such emphatic fashion, we might be looking at Mario Bautista at least a little bit better, you know, because he'd be the last guy to finish Miles Johns, and let's say Johns beats Castaneda, then who cares about that fight? Bautista would be like the only dominant win over him. So I do think Mario Bautista might be a little short-sighted right now, but we don't have odds. So maybe they come out and he's like a minus 700. So for right now, I do like Mario Bautista.
I think he will end up being quite a sizable favorite, somewhere in the minus 400, minus 450 range against Perrin. And again, Perrin's a good fighter, but low volume, and he's a guy that has a bit of power, but it's nothing that's going to overwhelm too many fighters. Again, he really does work in the takedown very well. He's very positionally sound once he gets to the mat, but the flip side of it, his takedown defense isn't necessarily the best. I think training at Syndicate, you're only going to get better at that, especially going from Sit Yud Tong. And again, another big talking point on Jay Perrin, his grandfather's in the New England Boxing Hall of Fame, which is really cool. Like, I know even in the Maritimes where we're from, there's a strong boxing culture from, you know, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, maybe not so much now. Brandon Brewer, Chris Norad, those are the only two
carrying the flag for a while.
I can think of around here right now. But big time opportunity for Jay Perrin. I just think Bautista much more volume heavy, a lot of power at the end of his shots, and a very dominant grappler as well. So both of us going with Mario Bautista in this fight. You let us know down below who you have in the comments section. Will the Oakland A's become the Vegas A's? Will Matt Olson get traded? Maybe we'll start a baseball podcast someday. But I'm really looking forward to this card coming up this weekend. And also, don't forget about Fight Night Picks kicks 2 hours before the prelims on Saturday. We get to offer up a final look. Hopefully both these guys make weight, including everybody else on the card. We get to offer up those final picks and predictions. So check it out. Saturday, 2 hours before the prelims. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.